Luna's massive frame cast a long shadow across her enclosure at the Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary, but her once commanding presence had diminished significantly over the past 3 months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The sanctuary's pride and joy, their beloved 50-year-old Asian elephant, was slowly fading away before their eyes. Her caretakers watched with growing desperation as she stood in the same corner day after day, barely touching her food and showing no interest in the enrichment activities that used to bring her such joy. Chen, the sanctuary's head veterinarian, stood at the observation point, her clipboard clutched tightly against her chest. The morning light revealed Luna's protruding ribs, a stark reminder of how much weight she had lost. The elephant's eyes, once bright and engaging, now seemed distant and glazed, with an inexplicable sadness that broke Sarah's heart every time she looked into them. Her blood work came back normal again, Sarah reported to Marcus, the sanctuary director, who had joined her for their daily morning assessment. Physically, there's nothing wrong with her that we can detect, but she's lost nearly 400 pounds in the last 3 months. If this continues... Her voice trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. Marcus nodded grimly, his weathered face creased with concern. Luna wasn't just any elephant. She had been the sanctuary's ambassador for over 2 decades, helping educate thousands of visitors about wildlife conservation. Her gentle nature and intelligence had made her a favorite among staff and visitors alike. She had even starred in several documentaries about elephant cognition and emotional intelligence. What puzzled everyone most was the abruptness of her decline. It had started shortly after the sanctuary's annual festival in early spring. One morning, Luna had simply stopped participating in her daily routines. At first, they thought she might be feeling under the weather, but days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The usually social elephant now spent her days either standing motionless or pacing in repetitive patterns, occasionally letting out low, mournful sounds that the staff had never heard her make before. The sanctuary had brought in specialists from across the country, each one leaving more puzzled than the last. They had tried everything: new foods, different enrichment activities, even introducing her to new elephant companions. Nothing seemed to reach through the invisible barrier Luna had built around herself. What made the situation even more heartbreaking was how Luna would sometimes cry, actual tears rolling down her wrinkled face. While elephants naturally secreted fluid from their eyes, the staff who had known Luna for years could tell these were different. They came accompanied by soft rumbles that sounded almost like sobs, especially during the quiet evening hours when the sanctuary was closed to visitors. The other elephants in the sanctuary seemed to sense her distress. Maya, a younger female, who had always looked up to Luna, would often stand near her enclosure, reaching out with her trunk in what appeared to be attempts to comfort her elderly friend. But even Maya's presence failed to lift Luna's spirits. Sarah had started spending her lunch breaks by Luna's enclosure, talking to her softly and documenting every minor change in behavior. She had worked with elephants for 15 years, but she had never seen anything quite like this. Elephants were known for their deep emotional lives and strong bonds, but Luna's behavior suggested something beyond normal elephant melancholy. "We need to do something drastic," Marcus finally said, breaking the heavy silence. "We can't watch her waste away like this." He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his contacts. "There might be one person, but I'm not sure if we can reach him anymore." Sarah turned to him, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time in weeks. "Who?" Marcus was already walking toward his office, his phone pressed to his ear. "Someone who knew Luna better than any of us ever did. Someone from her past." He paused at the door, looking back at the elephant who had brought so much joy to their sanctuary. If anyone can reach her, it might be him. As if sensing that she was the topic of discussion, Luna lifted her head slightly, her ears moving forward for just a moment, before dropping back into their now familiar dejected position. In the distance, Maya trumpeted, the sound echoing across the sanctuary grounds like a prayer for her friend's recovery. Marcus sat in his office, surrounded by stacks of Luna's medical records and behavioral reports from the past 3 months. His computer screen displayed an old photograph, a much younger Luna, standing beside a man in his early 30s, both covered in mud, after what appeared to be a particularly enthusiastic bathing session. The man's smile was as wide as the elephant's trunk was curled, a moment of pure joy captured in time. Dr. Thomas Walker had been more than just a caretaker at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. For nearly 15 years, he had been Luna's primary handler, developing a bond with her that went beyond the usual keeper-animal relationship. Their connection had been something special, something that had made the sanctuary famous in wildlife conservation circles. As Marcus dialed another number from his list of contacts, he remembered how Thomas had first arrived at the sanctuary. It was back when Luna had just been rescued from a struggling circus that could no longer care for its animals. She had been suspicious of humans then, bearing both physical and emotional scars from years of performing under harsh conditions. "Yes, I'm trying to reach Dr. Thomas Walker," Marcus said into the phone, his voice carrying an urgency that made his assistant glance up from her desk outside his office. "This is Marcus Reynolds from Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary." He listened for a moment, his face falling. "Another dead end," he muttered, adding another crossed-out number to his growing list. Thomas had left the sanctuary 5 years ago, accepting a position with an international wildlife conservation organization. His work took him to remote locations across Asia and Africa, making him notoriously difficult to contact. The last Marcus had heard, he was working on an elephant rehabilitation project somewhere in Thailand. Sarah knocked on the office door, entering with fresh charts in her hands. "Luna refused her morning medications again," she reported, her voice heavy with concern. "We tried mixing them with her favorite fruits, but she wouldn't even look at them. Her dehydration is getting worse." Marcus ran his hands through his graying hair, frustration evident in every line of his face. "Keep trying the usual networks," he instructed Sarah. "Someone must know how to reach Thomas. Check with the International Wildlife Conservation Society, the Asian Elephant Foundation, anyone who might have worked with him in the past few years." As Sarah turned to leave, Marcus's phone lit up with an incoming call from an international number. He grabbed it so quickly he nearly knocked over his coffee cup. "Dr. Walker?" he answered hopefully. Then his shoulders slumped. "Oh, Dr. Patel. Thank you for returning my call." The conversation that followed was brief but crucial. Dr. Patel, a colleague from the conservation circuit, didn't know Thomas's current location, but provided a vital piece of information: the name of the small conservation center in northern Thailand where Thomas had last been seen working. Marcus immediately began calculating time zones in his head. It was early morning in Tennessee, which meant it would be evening in Thailand. He drafted a quick email to the conservation center, marking it urgent and attaching several photos of Luna's current condition. "Should we try social media?" Sarah suggested, hovering in the doorway. "Post about Luna's condition. Maybe someone who follows wildlife conservation news might know how to reach him." Marcus shook his head slowly. "We can't risk causing a panic. Luna's story would go viral in hours, and the last thing we need right now is media attention and worried visitors. She's too fragile for that kind of disruption." As if to emphasize his point, a deep, mournful cry echoed from Luna's enclosure, causing both of them to wince. These cries had become more frequent in the past week, each one seeming to carry more pain than the last. "There's something else we haven't considered," Sarah said quietly, closing the door behind her. What if Thomas doesn't want to come back? It's been 5 years. People move on, build new lives." Marcus looked again at the old photograph on his screen. "You weren't here when Thomas left," he said softly. "You didn't see how hard it was for both of them. He didn't just move on to a better job opportunity. He was torn about leaving. The only reason he went was because he believed his work could help save more elephants in the wild." He stood up and walked to the window, where he could see Luna's enclosure in the distance. Thomas and Luna had something special, something rare. He would want to know she needs him. We just have to find him first. As the morning wore on, Marcus's inbox remained empty, and each phone call led to another dead end, but he refused to give up. Somewhere in the world, Thomas Walker was working with elephants, possibly unaware that the one who had started him on this path was slowly slipping away, waiting for a voice she hadn't heard in 5 long years. Phew. Light was fading at Doi La Conservation Center in northern Thailand when Thomas Walker finally checked his emails. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he scrolled through dozens of messages on his weathered laptop, most concerning the 3 young elephant calves his team had recently rescued from an illegal wildlife trafficking operation. His fingers froze mid-scroll when he saw the subject line, "Urgent, Luna needs you, Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary." His heart seemed to skip several beats as he opened the email, and the attached photos made his breath catch in his throat. The magnificent elephant he had known, robust, playful and full of life, had been replaced by a shadow of herself. Her sunken eyes and protruding ribs told a story that made his hands shake as he reached for his satellite phone. "Marcus!" Thomas's voice cracked slightly when the call connected. "I just saw your email. What happened to her?" The relief in Marcus's voice was palpable, even across the thousands of miles separating them. As Marcus detailed Luna's condition, Thomas's mind drifted back to their last day together. He had tried to explain to her that he was leaving, speaking softly as she wrapped her trunk around his arm, a gesture that had become their special way of communicating. He remembered promising her he would return someday, though he hadn't meant for someday to stretch into 5 years. "How soon can you get here?" Marcus asked, bringing Thomas back to the present. "She's getting worse every day." Thomas glanced at the calendar pinned to the bamboo wall of his modest office. The rescued calves were still critical, requiring round-the-clock care. His team was already stretched thin, and he was supposed to fly to Myanmar next week to consult on another rescue operation. He began, but another photo from Marcus's email caught his eye. Luna standing in the corner of her enclosure, tears visible on her weathered face. The sight hit him like a physical blow. "I'll be on the next flight I can get. Send me all her medical records and behavioral reports from the past few months." The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and hasty arrangements. His team leader, Dr. Somchai, listened gravely to the situation and immediately began reorganizing schedules to cover Thomas's absence. "Some bonds transcend our planned commitments," the older man said wisely, placing a reassuring hand on Thomas's shoulder. "Go to her." As Thomas packed his few belongings into a worn backpack, his hands brushed against an old photograph he kept tucked in his journal. It showed him and Luna on his first day as her primary handler, both of them looking younger and somewhat uncertain of each other. He remembered that day clearly, how she had studied him with those intelligent eyes, sizing him up as he stood nervously outside her enclosure. The journey from northern Thailand to Tennessee would take over 30 hours, including multiple connections and layovers. Thomas spent the bumpy ride to Chiang Mai Airport, reviewing Luna's records on his laptop, his concern growing with each report. The pattern was clear. Her decline had been sudden and severe, with no apparent physical cause. During his layover in Bangkok, Thomas called Sarah, the new head veterinarian he had never met, to discuss Luna's condition in detail. "Has she shown any interest in the enrichment activities we developed together?" he asked. "The hidden food puzzles or the musical instruments?" "We tried everything in her records," Sarah replied. "She just stands there, barely responding to anything or anyone. The only reaction we get is when she cries, usually in the evenings." Thomas closed his eyes, remembering how Luna used to trumpet happily when he arrived for their evening sessions, how she would playfully spray him with water during bath time, how she would gently touch his face with her trunk when he was having a bad day. The thought of her standing alone, withdrawn from the world, made his chest ache. As he boarded his flight to Los Angeles, Thomas pulled out his old journal, filled with notes from his years working with Luna. Each page contained observations, sketches, and detailed accounts of their breakthroughs together. He had documented everything: her favorite foods, the specific rumbles she made when she was happy, the games they had invented together. Would she remember any of it? Would she remember him? The question haunted him throughout the long flight. 5 years was a long time, even for an elephant's remarkable memory. Yet something told him that Luna's current state wasn't just about missing him. There had to be more to the story. As the plane crossed the Pacific Ocean, Thomas began making notes, preparing for every possibility he might face when he arrived. At Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary buzzed with nervous energy as staff prepared for Thomas's arrival. Sarah had ordered a complete cleaning of Luna's enclosure, ensuring every detail was perfect. The morning air was thick with anticipation as Marcus paced near the sanctuary's entrance, checking his phone every few minutes for updates on Thomas's journey. Luna stood in her usual corner, seemingly oblivious to the increased activity around her. The morning sun cast long shadows through the enclosure bars, highlighting her deteriorated condition even more starkly than the photographs had shown. Maya, the younger elephant, had positioned herself as close as possible to Luna's enclosure, her trunk occasionally reaching out in what looked like attempted comfort. "His flight landed," Marcus announced to Sarah, who was reviewing Luna's morning vitals. "He should be here within the hour." The news spread quickly among the staff, many of whom had worked alongside Thomas years ago. Some shared whispered stories about the unique bond he had shared with Luna, while others, who had never met him, wondered if his presence could really make a difference. Sarah approached Luna's enclosure, armed with her daily attempt at providing nutrients. "Just hold on a little longer," she whispered, placing fresh fruits and vegetables in the feeding area. As usual, Luna showed no interest, her gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the sanctuary walls. The sound of tires on gravel announced Thomas's arrival. He stepped out of the car looking travel-worn, his clothes wrinkled from the long journey. But his eyes were alert and focused. Marcus moved to greet him, but Thomas was already striding toward Luna's enclosure, his backpack still slung over one shoulder. He stopped several yards away, taking in the sight of his old friend. The photographs hadn't prepared him for the reality. Luna's proud frame had diminished, her skin hanging loosely where muscle had wasted away. Her usually smooth forehead was deeply creased, giving her the appearance of carrying an invisible burden. "Has she eaten anything this morning?" Thomas asked quietly, not taking his eyes off Luna. Sarah shook her head. "Nothing since yesterday afternoon, and even then it was just a few mouthfuls of fruit. We've been providing nutrients through supplements in her water, but she's drinking less and less." Thomas nodded, processing the information while continuing to observe Luna's behavior. Her ears moved slightly, the first response to external stimuli the staff had seen in days, but she remained facing away from them. He set his backpack down slowly and pulled out his old journal. "I need you all to step back," he said softly. "Give us some space. And please, no recording or photographs. This isn't a media moment." The small crowd of staff that had gathered quietly retreated, though they remained within viewing distance, holding their collective breath. Thomas approached the enclosure slowly, deliberately. He stopped at what he remembered as Luna's comfort distance, close enough to be present, far enough to not feel threatening. For several long minutes, he simply stood there, allowing his presence to permeate the space. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying the same gentle tone he had used thousands of times before. "Luna, girl, what's going on with you?" The words hung in the air, soft but clear. Luna's ears twitched again, more noticeably this time. Her head lifted slightly, but she didn't turn around. Thomas continued speaking, his voice carrying years of shared memories. "Remember how we used to spend our evenings? You'd always try to steal my hat. You never did like that old blue cap." A low rumble emerged from Luna, so quiet it was, almost imperceptible. Thomas took a small step closer, his heart pounding. "I still have that little bell you used to love playing with. Would you like to hear it?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass bell, its surface worn. From years of use, the gentle tinkling sound filled the morning air. Luna's head turned slightly, her right ear now fully facing Thomas. He noticed a tear rolling down her cheek, catching the sunlight. "I know, old friend," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "I know it's been a long time." Maya, watching from her enclosure, let out a soft trumpet, as if encouraging her. Friend to respond. The younger elephant had never seen Luna show this much interest in anything or anyone in months. The entire sanctuary seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Thomas took another step forward, now close enough to the enclosure that he could reach out and touch the bars. He began humming a tune, an old habit from their evening sessions together. Luna's body tensed, and for a moment everyone feared she would retreat further into herself. Instead, she began to turn, slowly, deliberately, each movement seeming to require immense effort. As she gradually faced Thomas, their eyes met for the first time in 5 years. The recognition in her gaze was unmistakable, and another tear rolled down her weathered face. The moment Luna's eyes met Thomas's, time seemed to stand still at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. The connection between them, despite the 5-year gap, crackled with an almost tangible energy. Thomas's hand trembled slightly as he reached through. The bars, palm upward in a gesture that had once been as natural as breathing between them. "Hi there, beautiful girl," he whispered, his voice carrying decades of shared memories. Luna took a shaky step forward, then another, her movements hesitant but deliberate. The staff, watching from a distance, barely dared to breathe, afraid that any sudden sound might break this fragile moment of reconnection. As Luna approached, Thomas could see the toll the past months had taken on her more clearly. Her eyes, though now focused on him, carried a depth of sadness he had never seen before. She stopped just short of his outstretched hand, and for a heart-wrenching moment he feared she might retreat. Instead, she slowly extended her trunk, the tip hovering inches from his palm. Thomas remained perfectly still, letting her take her time. He could feel her breath, warm and familiar, as she scented him. Then, with a gentleness that brought tears to his eyes, she touched his hand. The contact was brief, almost tentative, but it sent a ripple of excitement through the watching staff. It was the first voluntary contact Luna had initiated with anyone in months. Sarah quickly made notes in her medical log, documenting every detail of this breakthrough moment. "That's right," Thomas encouraged softly, keeping his hand steady. "It's me, I'm here." Luna's trunk moved from his hand to his face, touching it with the same careful exploration she had used when they first met nearly 2 decades ago. She was relearning him, confirming that this wasn't another dream or hallucination. Suddenly, Luna let out a low rumble, a sound so distinctive that Thomas's heart leaped. It was their sound, a special vocalization she had only ever used with him during their quieter moments together. The fact that she remembered it, that she chose to use it now, spoke volumes about the depth of their connection. In response, Thomas reached into his pocket and pulled out another item he had carried with him across continents. A small wooden flute. Luna's ears perked forward at the sight of it. This had been part of their evening ritual. He would play simple tunes while she listened, sometimes accompanying him with her own gentle rumbles. As he brought the flute to his lips, Luna took another step closer. The first notes of an old favorite melody filled the air, and something remarkable happened. Luna's posture began to change. The heavy burden she had been carrying seemed to lift slightly from her shoulders, and her eyes gained a spark of their old brightness. Maya, still watching from her enclosure, swayed gently to the music, her own trunk raised in what looked like appreciation. The younger elephant had never seen this side of her elderly friend, and her excitement was palpable in the morning air. Thomas played for several minutes, weaving together melodies that held years of shared experiences. When he finally lowered the flute, Luna was standing directly in front of him, close enough that he could see every wrinkle and scar on her aged face. Without warning, she wrapped her trunk around his arm, their old gesture of affection, and held on. Sarah started forward, concerned about the sudden movement, but Marcus held her back. "Let them be," he whispered. "This is what we've been waiting for." Thomas stood perfectly still, allowing Luna to maintain the contact she so desperately needed. Her grip wasn't tight, but it was secure, as if she were afraid he might disappear again if she let go. He could feel slight tremors running through her trunk, and his free hand moved to stroke it gently. "I know you're hurting," he said softly, speaking just for her. "But I need you to eat something for me. Will you do that? For old time's sake?" He nodded to Sarah, who quickly prepared a small offering of Luna's favorite fruits. When Sarah approached with the food, Luna's trunk tightened slightly around Thomas's arm, but she didn't pull away. Thomas took a piece of mango from the tray and held it up. "Remember how we used to share these after our evening sessions?" Slowly, tentatively, Luna's trunk unwound from his arm and reached for the fruit. The entire sanctuary seemed to hold its breath as she brought it to her mouth. The sound of her chewing was like music to everyone's ears. It was the first time she had accepted food without coaxing in months. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, Luna continued to accept small pieces of fruit from Thomas's hand. Each acceptance was a small victory, a step back toward life. But Thomas could see in her eyes that there was still something troubling her, something deeper than just his absence. Whatever had triggered her decline was still there, beneath the surface of this reunion. He would need to stay, he realized, stay and unravel the mystery of what had caused his old friend such deep distress. As if reading his thoughts, Luna's trunk once again found his arm, holding on with gentle insistence. This time, Thomas made a silent promise. He wouldn't leave until he had helped her find her way back to joy. The following days brought small but significant improvements in Luna's condition. Thomas fell easily back into his old routine at the sanctuary, arriving early each morning and staying until the last light faded from the sky. He set up a chair near Luna's enclosure, alternating between reviewing her medical records and simply being present with her, rebuilding the trust that 5 years of absence had strained. Sarah watched with growing fascination as Thomas worked with Luna. His methods were unlike anything she had seen in her years of veterinary practice. He didn't just care for Luna, He communicated with her in a language built from years of shared experiences. Every gesture, every sound had meaning between them. "Tell me everything that happened before she stopped eating," Thomas asked one morning, as they watched Luna take her first full breakfast in months. Even the smallest details could be important. Sarah handed him a thick folder of incident reports and daily logs. It started right after our spring festival. She was fine during the event, interactive, engaging with visitors, completely normal. Then one morning, she just changed. Thomas frowned, flipping through the pages. The spring festival. Was there anything different about it this year? New activities, different arrangements? Actually, yes. Marcus joined them, carrying fresh behavioral charts. We had a larger turnout than usual, added some new attractions, including a mobile petting zoo and a carnival section. Had to rearrange some of the regular exhibits to accommodate everything. Something flickered in Thomas's eyes. A carnival section. He turned to Luna, studying her body language as she ate. Though she was accepting food again, her movements still carried an undertone of anxiety that only someone who knew her well would notice. "Did any of the carnival equipment include calliope music?" Thomas asked suddenly, his voice tight with realization. Marcus thought for a moment. Yes, there was a vintage carousel. It played traditional carnival music throughout the day. Why? Thomas set down the reports and walked to Luna's enclosure. She immediately reached for him with her trunk, a gesture that had become frequent since his return. "Because Luna was rescued from a circus," he said softly, stroking her trunk. "She spent the first 12 years of her life there, before the circus went bankrupt and had to surrender their animals." Sarah's eyes widened with understanding. The carnival music triggered memories of her circus days? "Not just memories," Thomas explained, pulling out his old journal. "When I first started working with her, I documented everything about her past that we knew. The circus she came from, Carson's Wonder Show, was notorious for their harsh training methods. They used calliope music during training sessions to mask the sounds." He couldn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. The implications were clear. The cheerful carousel music, meant to bring joy to festival visitors, had reopened old wounds for Luna, triggering memories of a traumatic past she had worked so hard to overcome. "But that was just one day," Sarah said, puzzled. The festival ended, the music stopped. Thomas shook his head. "Trauma doesn't work that way, especially not for elephants. Their memory and emotional capacity are extraordinary. Once those memories were triggered, she probably became trapped in them, and without anyone who knew her history well enough to understand what was happening." Luna's trunk wrapped around his arm again, and Thomas realized she had stopped eating. Her eyes held that distant look he had come to recognize as a sign she was retreating into herself. Quickly, he pulled out his flute and began to play, not a carnival melody, but the gentle, natural tunes they had created together over the years. Gradually, Luna's eyes refocused, and her trunk relaxed its grip. Thomas continued playing, watching as she slowly returned to the present moment. When he finally lowered the flute, he noticed Marcus and Sarah watching with amazement. "She needs more than just my presence," Thomas said, his decision made. "She needs help processing these memories, creating new associations to replace the traumatic ones. It's going to take time." Marcus nodded slowly. "The position of head behaviorist is still open. We've never found anyone who could fill your shoes properly, if you're interested." Thomas looked at Luna, who was now calmly returning to her breakfast. The answer was clear in his mind. His work in Asia was important, but right now, this elephant who had first inspired his career in wildlife conservation needed him more. "I'll need to make some calls," he said. "Arrange for someone to take over. My project's in Thailand. But yes, I'll stay." The words had barely left his mouth when Luna's trunk gentle touched his cheek, as if saying thank you. Sarah smiled, watching the interaction. You know, in all my years working with animals, I've never seen anything quite like this. It's not just about feeding her or providing medical care. It's about understanding her story, her trauma, her needs. Thomas nodded, his hand still resting on Luna's trunk. Every elephant has a story, he said quietly. Our job isn't just to care for them physically, but to help them heal from the chapters that have hurt them. Luna taught me that long ago. Now it's time for me to help her write a new chapter. The following weeks at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary saw the implementation of what Thomas called memory replacement therapy. Each morning began with gentle exercises designed to help Luna create new, positive associations with sounds and experiences that had once triggered her trauma. Thomas worked closely with Sarah and the sanctuary staff to develop a comprehensive rehabilitation program unlike anything they had tried before. The key is consistency, Thomas explained during a staff meeting, his laptop displaying charts of Luna's progress. We need to create a safe, predictable environment where she can process her past without being overwhelmed by it. The sanctuary team listened intently, taking notes as he outlined his approach. Many of them had been skeptical at first, but Luna's steady improvement was impossible to ignore. The most significant change came in Luna's interaction with other elephants, particularly Maya. Where she had once stood isolated in her corner, Luna now showed interest in her younger companion. Thomas had noticed this potential connection and began incorporating Maya into their daily sessions. "Watch this," he said to Sarah one morning as he positioned himself between the two elephants' enclosures. He began playing his flute, but this time, instead of their usual melodies, he introduced a new, playful tune. Maya immediately perked up, swaying to the music as she always did. But it was Luna's reaction that caught everyone's attention. For the first time in months, Luna lifted her trunk and sprayed a gentle mist of water in Maya's direction. The younger elephant responded with delighted trumpeting, spraying water back. It was a simple interaction, but it represented a breakthrough in Luna's recovery. She was choosing to engage, to play, to connect. "She's becoming a mentor again," Thomas observed, making notes in his journal. "Just like she used to be with the younger elephants before." He paused, remembering how Luna had once helped integrate new rescues into the sanctuary, showing them the ropes with a patience that had amazed everyone. Sarah reviewed Luna's latest medical charts with growing optimism. Her weight is stabilizing, and her blood work is showing improvement. Whatever you're doing, it's working on both a physical and emotional level. Thomas nodded, but his expression remained thoughtful. "We're making progress, but there's still something holding her back. Have you noticed how she reacts during the afternoon visitor hours?" Indeed, while Luna was showing remarkable improvement, in her private sessions, she still became withdrawn when crowds gathered around her enclosure. The sound of children's excited voices, which she had once welcomed, now seemed to cause her anxiety. "I think I understand why," Thomas said, pulling up old photographs on his tablet. "Look at these, Luna during previous spring festivals. See how she's positioned. Always at the front of her enclosure, engaging with visitors, especially children." Sarah studied the images. She was a natural ambassador. Exactly. But during her circus days, performing for crowds wasn't a choice. It was a requirement, often enforced through harsh methods. When the carnival music at the festival triggered those memories, it didn't just remind her of the physical trauma. It made her question every performance she'd given since, even the voluntary ones here at the sanctuary. This revelation led to a new phase in Luna's rehabilitation. Thomas began working with the sanctuary's education department to develop a modified visitor interaction program. Instead of large crowds, they introduced small, quiet groups who would sit calmly near her enclosure while Thomas explained elephant conservation. Luna's response to this new approach was remarkable. Gradually, she began showing interest in the quiet visitors, especially when they included children who reminded her of the gentle interactions she'd enjoyed before her crisis. Thomas would play his flute during these sessions, creating a peaceful atmosphere that helped Luna associate human presence with safety rather than performance pressure. One particularly meaningful moment came when a young girl in a wheelchair visited with her family. The girl sat quietly, watching Luna with wonder. To everyone's surprise, Luna approached the edge of her enclosure and gently extended her trunk toward the child, allowing her to experience a gentle touch that brought tears to her parents' eyes. "She's choosing to connect again," Thomas explained to the staff later, "not because she has to, but because she wants to. That's the difference between her circus past and her sanctuary present. Here, every interaction is her choice." The sanctuary board, impressed by Luna's progress, approved Thomas's proposal for an expanded elephant rehabilitation program. This would allow him to apply what they'd learned from Luna's case to help other elephants dealing with trauma from captivity. "We're not just helping one elephant," he told Marcus as they reviewed the plans. "We're developing a model that could benefit captive elephants everywhere." Luna's journey is teaching us how to better understand and support these incredible animals. As if to emphasize his point, Luna's trumpet echoed across the sanctuary, a sound of joy that had been absent for too long. Maya answered with her own call, and for a moment the air was filled with the natural sounds of elephants communicating, sharing their own language of friendship and recovery. As autumn approached, Luna's transformation became increasingly evident to everyone at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. Her eyes had regained their spark, and her healthy appetite had returned, bringing her weight back to normal. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in her relationship with Maya, which had evolved into something unexpected and beautiful. Thomas spent hours documenting their interactions, fascinated by how the two elephants had developed their own communication system. Maya, younger and more energetic, would often initiate play by splashing water or tossing hay in Luna's direction. Luna, in turn, had taken on a maternal role, teaching Maya various trunk movements and vocalizations that Thomas recognized from his years of observation. "It's like watching her become whole again," Sarah remarked one morning as they observed Luna showing Maya how to peel a coconut, a skill that required both dexterity and patience. "She's not just recovering, she's thriving." Thomas nodded, making notes in his journal. "She's found a new purpose. Instead of performing for crowds, she's passing on her knowledge to the next generation. It's completely on her terms, which makes all the difference." The sanctuary had fully embraced Thomas's rehabilitation program, making significant changes to accommodate their new understanding of elephant psychology. The Spring Festival was reimagined, moving carnival attractions far from the elephant enclosures and replacing them with educational exhibits about elephant conservation and natural behaviors. One crisp morning, as Thomas arrived for his daily session, he found Luna already waiting at the edge of her enclosure. But something was different. She wasn't alone. A small group of sanctuary staff had gathered, their faces showing a mix of excitement and disbelief. "You need to see this," Sarah said, handing him her tablet. The screen showed night vision footage from Luna's enclosure. In it, Luna was teaching Maya a series of trunk movements that Thomas instantly recognized. They were the same gestures he had taught Luna years ago for their enrichment activities. "She's been doing this every night for the past week," Sarah explained. "We think she waits until it's quiet because it reminds her of your evening sessions. She's literally passing on your lessons to Maya." Thomas watched the footage, emotion tightening his throat. The movements were precise, deliberate, Luna correcting Maya's trunk position just as he had once corrected hers. It was more than just mimicry. It was a conscious transfer of knowledge from one generation to the next. The discovery led to a new addition to their rehabilitation program. Thomas began incorporating structured teaching moments into their sessions, allowing Luna to demonstrate behaviors and skills to Maya while he documented the process. The younger elephant proved to be an eager student, and Luna seemed to gain confidence with each successful lesson. "We're seeing something revolutionary here," Thomas told the sanctuary board during their monthly meeting. "Luna isn't just recovering from her trauma. She's using her experience to become a teacher. This could change how we approach elephant rehabilitation in sanctuaries worldwide." The board members watched video compilations of Luna's progress, from her darkest days of isolation to her current role as Maya's mentor. The transformation was undeniable, and it opened up new possibilities for elephant care and conservation. One afternoon, as Thomas sat in his usual spot between the two enclosures, he noticed Luna doing something peculiar. She had gathered a small pile of objects, a branch, a ball, and some hay, and was arranging them in a specific pattern. It took him a moment to realize she was recreating one of their old enrichment puzzles. "Are you setting up a lesson, old friend?" he asked softly, reaching for his notebook. Luna responded with a gentle rumble, then used her trunk to gesture toward Maya, who was watching with obvious interest. What followed was an extraordinary display of elephant intelligence and teaching ability. Luna demonstrated the puzzle solutions step by step, showing Maya how to move each object in sequence. When Maya made mistakes, Luna patiently reset the items and demonstrated again. Sarah, who had been filming the interaction, shook her head in amazement. "She remembers every detail of your training sessions, but more than that, she understands the pedagogy, how to break down complex tasks into manageable steps." Thomas smiled, watching Luna praise Maya's successful attempt with a gentle trunk touch. "She's always been special, but now she's showing us just how much these animals can achieve when we give them the chance to be themselves, free from expectations and past trauma." The success of Luna's rehabilitation had attracted attention from other wildlife sanctuaries, and requests for information about Thomas's methods were pouring in. But for Thomas, the most important validation came in the form of Luna's daily choices. Her decision to engage, to teach, to connect, all on her own terms. As the day wound down, Thomas played his flute one last time, the melody carrying across both enclosures. Luna and Maya swayed together, their trunks intertwined in a gesture of companionship that spoke volumes about how far they'd come. The growing success of Luna's rehabilitation brought new challenges and opportunities to Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. As word spread about her remarkable recovery and transformation into a mentor, other sanctuaries began reaching out with cases of their own, elephants struggling with similar trauma-induced behaviors. Thomas found himself dividing his time between direct care for Luna and consulting with colleagues across the country. Each morning, he would arrive early to check on Luna, ensuring their progress wasn't affected by these new demands on his time. He needed to maintain the delicate balance they had achieved. "Remember when you first joined the sanctuary?" Marcus asked one morning as they watched Luna and Maya engage in their now routine morning exercises. "You were just a volunteer, and Luna was our most challenging resident. Now look at you both, pioneers in elephant rehabilitation." Thomas smiled, remembering those early days. "She was my greatest teacher," he replied, making notes as Luna demonstrated a new trunk movement to Maya. "Everything I know about elephant psychology, I learned from her." The sanctuary had begun documenting every aspect of Luna's teaching sessions with Maya. Sarah had set up multiple cameras around their enclosures, capturing interactions from various angles. The footage would become part of a comprehensive study on elephant social learning and trauma recovery. "Watch this," Thomas said, pointing to Luna's behavior. She had just finished showing Maya a complex sequence of movements involving their enrichment toys. Instead of immediately moving on, Luna waited, watching Maya carefully. When the younger elephant successfully repeated the sequence, Luna responded with a low, rumbling vocalization that Thomas recognized as approval. "She's not just teaching skills," Sarah observed, reviewing the footage. "She's building Maya's confidence. Look at how she breaks down each task, adjusts her approach when Maya struggles, and celebrates every success." Their observations were interrupted by an urgent call from a sanctuary in Florida. They had an elderly female elephant showing similar symptoms to Luna's initial crisis, refusing food, withdrawing from interaction, displaying signs of emotional distress. They wanted to know if Thomas could consult on the case. As Thomas discussed the situation with the Florida team, Luna and Maya continued their morning routine, but something remarkable happened. Luna seemed to sense the serious nature of Thomas's conversation. She paused her lesson with Maya and moved closer to where Thomas stood, her ears forward, listening intently. "I think she understands," Sarah whispered, watching Luna's reaction. "She knows you're talking about helping another elephant like her." Thomas ended the call and approached Luna's enclosure. "What do you think, old friend? Should we help them understand what you've taught us?" Luna's response was to gently touch his face with her trunk, a gesture that had come to mean so much between them. The decision was made to develop a formal program, combining Luna's rehabilitation success with Thomas's expertise. They would call it the Luna Protocol, a comprehensive approach to helping traumatized elephants recover through a combination of trust-building, positive reinforcement, and peer-to-peer learning. The key is understanding that every elephant's trauma is unique, Thomas explained during a staff training session. What triggered Luna's crisis was specific to her circus past, but the principles of her recovery, safety, choice, connection, those are universal. As if to demonstrate his point, Luna had begun showing unprecedented levels of initiative in her interactions with Maya. She would often create new variations of their enrichment activities, combining elements from different exercises in ways that Thomas had never taught her. "She's not just repeating what she learned," Sarah noted, reviewing the day's footage. "She's innovating, creating new ways to engage and teach. It's like she's taken everything you taught her and developed her own curriculum." The sanctuary board was so impressed with Luna's progress that they approved the construction of a new observation area, designed specifically for small groups to watch and learn from Luna and Maya's interactions. The space would be built with input from Thomas and the elephant care team, ensuring it prioritized the elephant's comfort and choice in participation. One particularly moving moment came when Luna was introduced to a live video feed of the Florida elephant. Though experts debated whether elephants could recognize others on screen, Luna's reaction was undeniable. She approached the display, trunk extended, and made soft vocalizations that Thomas had only heard her use in moments of deep empathy. "She recognizes the pain," Thomas said quietly, documenting Luna's response. "Even through a screen, she can sense another elephant in distress. This is why the Luna Protocol is so important, because these animals understand and feel so much more than we often give them credit for." As the day drew to a close, Thomas sat in his usual spot, updating his journal with the day's observations. Luna and Maya had settled into their evening routine, sharing hay and making soft, rumbling sounds to each other. The sight of them together, Adi, the once traumatized elephant now confidently mentoring her younger companion, was a powerful testament to the resilience of these extraordinary animals. "We're just beginning to understand," Thomas murmured, watching Luna gently adjust Maya's trunk position during their evening exercise. "And you, my friend, are leading the way." News of Luna's remarkable recovery and her role in developing the Luna Protocol spread through the wildlife conservation community like wildfire. What had started as one elephant's journey back from trauma had evolved into a groundbreaking approach to elephant rehabilitation. Thomas found himself fielding calls from sanctuaries and wildlife centers across the globe, all eager to learn. From Luna's example, the Florida elephant, whom they had watched via video feed, had begun showing signs of improvement after her caregivers implemented elements of the Luna Protocol. Thomas spent hours on video conferences with their team, sharing insights gained from Luna's recovery while carefully monitoring their progress. "It's not just about the techniques," he explained during one such call, while Luna and Maya performed their morning exercises nearby. "It's about understanding each elephant's unique story and creating an environment where they feel safe enough to heal." One morning, as Thomas arrived at the sanctuary, he found Sarah practically bursting with excitement. "You need to see this," she said, leading him to her office. She pulled up the overnight footage from Luna's enclosure, showing something remarkable. In the soft glow of the security lights, Luna could be seen teaching Maya a series of movements that none of the staff had ever witnessed before. They were natural behaviors, ones that wild elephants would use in their native habitats, foraging techniques, social gestures, and communication signals that Luna must have learned from her mother before being captured for the circus. "She's not just passing on what we taught her," Thomas breathed, watching the footage in amazement. "She's sharing her earliest memories, knowledge from her wild heritage." The revelation brought tears to his eyes as he realized the profound significance of what they were witnessing. Marcus joined them, equally moved by the discovery. "She's connecting Maya to their shared ancestral knowledge. It's like she's building a bridge between the wild past and their sanctuary present." The implications were enormous. Luna wasn't simply recovering from her trauma, she was reconnecting with her innate elephant nature and sharing it with the next generation. This added a new dimension to the Luna Protocol, the importance of allowing captive elephants to express and transmit their natural behaviors. During their morning session, Thomas observed Luna and Maya with fresh eyes. Every interaction, every gesture now carried deeper meaning. When Luna demonstrated how to test the ground with her trunk before stepping, or how to communicate through subtle ear movements, she wasn't just teaching skills. She was preserving vital elephant culture. "We need to document everything," Sarah insisted, setting up additional cameras. "This could revolutionize how we approach elephant care in captivity. It's not just about physical well-being anymore, it's about cultural preservation." The sanctuary board convened a special meeting to discuss the implications of these new developments. They decided to expand the Luna Protocol to include what they called cultural heritage preservation, creating opportunities for elephants to maintain and share their natural behaviors and knowledge. As Thomas updated his journal that evening, he reflected on how far they'd come. Luna, once withdrawn and dying from emotional trauma, had not only recovered but had become a teacher, preserving and passing on both learned and innate knowledge to the next generation. Maya had proven to be the perfect student, her youth and curiosity making her receptive to Luna's teachings. The younger elephant had begun incorporating Luna's wild behaviors into her daily routines, adding her own playful variations that sometimes made Luna pause and watch with what looked remarkably like pride. "You're not just healing," Thomas said softly to Luna as she demonstrated another natural behavior to Maya. "You're becoming who you were always meant to be." Luna responded by gently touching his cheek with her trunk, a gesture that now seemed to carry even more significance. The success of their program had caught the attention of wildlife documentary filmmakers who approached the sanctuary about creating a feature on Luna's story. After careful consideration and consultation with Thomas and the care team, Marcus agreed, but with strict conditions to ensure the filming wouldn't disturb Luna's routine or progress. Her story needs to be told, Marcus explained to the staff, not just because it's remarkable, but because it could help change how we think about elephant rehabilitation worldwide. Thomas nodded in agreement, knowing that Luna's journey could inspire better care for captive elephants everywhere. As they prepared for this new chapter, Thomas noticed something extraordinary in Luna's behavior. When the first small camera crew arrived for preliminary filming, she didn't show any signs of anxiety or withdrawal. Instead, she continued her lessons with Maya, seemingly understanding that sharing her story could help other elephants like her. "She knows," Sarah said, watching Luna calmly demonstrate a complex trunk movement while the cameras rolled. "Somehow, she understands that what she's doing is important, beyond just helping Maya." Thomas smiled, remembering the frightened, traumatized elephant he had first met all those years ago. "She's always been special," he replied. "We just had to give her the chance to show us how special she truly is." The documentary filming brought a new dynamic to Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. The camera crew, carefully selected for their experience with wildlife, worked under strict guidelines developed by Thomas and the care team. They were instructed to maintain a respectful distance, use minimal equipment, and always defer to Luna's comfort level. What surprised everyone was Luna's apparent understanding of the documentation process. She seemed to choose specific moments to demonstrate her most impressive teachings with Maya, almost as if she knew the importance of sharing these behaviors with a wider audience. The film crew often found themselves scrambling to capture unexpected moments of profound elephant communication. "It's like she's curating her own story," one of the cinematographers remarked, after capturing a particularly moving sequence where Luna taught Maya an intricate greeting ceremony that wild elephants use in their natural habitat. Thomas smiled, knowing that Luna's intelligence had always exceeded expectations. During one memorable morning session, Luna did something unprecedented. As the cameras rolled, she began demonstrating a series of movements that Thomas recognized from his earliest days with her, the trust-building exercises they had used to forge their initial bond. But this time, she was showing them to Maya, in a modified form, adapted for elephant-to-elephant interaction. "She's taken our human-elephant trust-building protocol and translated it into her own language," Sarah observed, frantically taking notes. "She's creating a hybrid form of communication that bridges the gap between human care and natural elephant behavior." The implications of this development were staggering. Luna wasn't just passing on knowledge, she was actively synthesizing different forms of communication and teaching methods. She had taken what she learned from her rehabilitation and transformed it into something entirely new. Thomas spent hours updating the Luna protocol to include these observations. "What we're seeing here goes beyond simple recovery," he explained. "During a staff meeting, Luna is showing us how captive elephants can maintain their cultural heritage while adapting to sanctuary life in a healthy way." The documentary crew captured another breakthrough moment when a new rescue elephant arrived. At the sanctuary, the newcomer, a young female named Star, had also come from a circus background and showed signs of trauma similar to Luna's initial state. Instead of keeping their distance as elephants often do with newcomers, Luna and Maya approached their shared fence line with obvious interest. "Watch this," Thomas whispered to the camera crew as Luna began making soft, rumbling sounds, the same comforting vocalizations he had used to help her through her darkest days. Maya joined in, creating a harmony of elephant voices that seemed to calm the nervous newcomer. Over the next few days, Luna and Maya worked in tandem, demonstrating peaceful behaviors and social interactions for Star to observe. Luna would show a movement or gesture, Maya would demonstrate it with her own youthful energy, and Star would watch with increasing interest from her quarantine enclosure. "She's created her own rehabilitation team," Sarah marveled, watching. The three elephants interact. Luna leads with experience, Maya demonstrates with enthusiasm, and together they're showing Star a path forward. The documentary team was capturing what Thomas now recognized as a pivotal moment in elephant care, the emergence of peer-to-peer rehabilitation. Luna had taken the principles that helped her recover and was now actively applying them to help another traumatized elephant, but in a uniquely elephant way. One afternoon, as the cameras rolled, Star attempted her first trick movement, a behavior common among circus elephants. Instead of ignoring or encouraging it, Luna immediately demonstrated a natural alternative, using her trunk to explore enrichment toys. The message was clear. Here, you don't need to perform, you can just be an elephant. "This is revolutionary," Marcus said, reviewing the footage. "Luna isn't just recovering from her own trauma, she's actively helping prevent other elephants from falling back into learned performance behaviors. She's teaching them how to be authentic." The documentary was capturing more than just a story of recovery. It was documenting the birth of a new approach to elephant rehabilitation, one led by the elephants themselves. Luna had become more than just a success story. She was now a pioneer in elephant-led healing. Thomas observed all of this with a mixture of pride and humility. "We didn't teach her this," he told the documentary team during an interview. "We just created the space for her to heal, and she's showing us what elephants are capable of when given the chance to be themselves." As the sun set on another day of filming, Luna gathered Maya and approached the fence line nearest to Star's enclosure. Together, they engaged in a series of gentle movements and vocalizations that seemed almost like a lullaby. The documentary crew captured this moment in silence, understanding they were witnessing something extraordinary, the beginning of a new chapter in elephant care, written by the elephants themselves. The documentary's filming continued to capture remarkable moments of Luna's evolved role at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. Star's integration into the elephant community became a central focus, as Luna and Maya's influence on her recovery proved more successful than anyone had anticipated. Within weeks, Star had begun showing signs of improvement that had taken months to achieve with traditional methods. One particularly significant breakthrough came during a morning session when Thomas arrived to find all three elephants engaged in what appeared to be a coordinated morning ritual. Luna led the sequence, demonstrating natural foraging behaviors, while Maya and Star followed her example. The cameras captured the precise moment when Star abandoned a learned circus stance and instead mimicked Luna's natural movement patterns. "This is extraordinary," Sarah whispered, watching through her binoculars. "She's not just copying Luna, she's unlearning her circus behaviors and replacing them with natural elephant movements. And it's happening so much faster than we expected." Thomas nodded, making detailed notes in his journal. "It's because the teaching is coming from other elephants. They're speaking a language we can never fully replicate, no matter how well we understand elephant behavior." The success with Star led to discussions about expanding the sanctuary's rehabilitation program. Other facilities began requesting to send their troubled elephants to Meadowland, hoping to benefit from what they now called the Luna effect, the remarkable ability of recovered elephants to help heal their traumatized peers. During one particularly moving sequence caught on film, Luna was observed teaching both Maya and Star a complex series of trunk movements that resembled a greeting ceremony seen in wild elephant herds. What made this moment special was how she adapted the movements for each of her students, subtle modifications that accounted for their different sizes and physical capabilities. She's not just teaching them the movements, Thomas explained, to the documentary team. She's personalizing the instruction for each elephant. This level of advanced teaching ability, it's unprecedented in captive elephant studies. The film crew had also begun documenting nighttime interactions using specialized low-light cameras. These recordings revealed something extraordinary. The elephants engaged in what appeared to be practice sessions after hours, with Luna overseeing Maya and Star as they rehearsed the day's lessons. One evening, during a particularly quiet filming session, the crew captured a moment that brought tears to even the most seasoned wildlife photographers. Luna was observed performing a series of movements that exactly matched archived footage of wild elephant herds in Africa, behaviors she couldn't have learned in captivity, but must have remembered from her earliest days with her mother. "This is generational memory at work," Thomas explained during a review session. She's accessing behaviors that were passed down through countless generations of wild elephants before her. And now, despite everything she's been through, she's ensuring that knowledge survives by passing it on to Maya and Star. The Sanctuary Board, seeing the profound impact of Luna's work, approved the construction of a larger shared enclosure that would eventually allow all three elephants to interact more directly. The design incorporated features that would encourage natural behaviors while maintaining safety and comfort for all residents. "We're not just building an enclosure," Marcus told the documentary team. "We're creating a space where elephant culture can be preserved and transmitted to future generations." Luna has shown us that rehabilitation isn't just about physical recovery, it's about cultural restoration. During the construction planning, Luna showed an unexpected interest in the activity around her enclosure. She would watch the surveyors and architects intently, sometimes demonstrating to Maya and Star how to investigate new objects or changes in their environment. It was as if she was teaching them to be adaptable while maintaining their elephant nature. Sarah had begun compiling a comprehensive database of Luna's teaching behaviors, noting how her methods evolved as Star gained confidence and Maya developed her own teaching style. "We're seeing the emergence of a multi-generational teaching system," she explained. "Luna teaches both Maya and Star, but now Maya has begun teaching Star certain things in her own way." The documentary captured this complex dynamic in action. Luna demonstrating a behavior, Maya adding her own enthusiastic variation, and Star learning from both of them. It was a perfect illustration of how elephant knowledge could be preserved and adapted in a sanctuary setting. Thomas spent his evenings updating the Luna protocol to reflect these new insights. "What we're learning here goes beyond elephant rehabilitation," he told the filming team during an interview. "Luna is showing us how to bridge the gap between captive care and natural elephant behavior. She's creating a new model for wildlife conservation." As the film crew packed up their equipment for the day, they captured one final, unscripted moment. Luna, Maya, and Star stood together at the fence line, their trunks intertwined in a gesture of connection that transcended their individual stories. It was a powerful image of healing, hope, and the enduring strength of elephant relationships. As the documentary neared completion, a surprising development at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary captured everyone's attention. The shared enclosure, carefully designed to accommodate Luna, Maya, and Star, was finally ready for its first trial run. The integration process would be gradual, but Luna had other ideas about the pace of their reunion. On the morning of the first planned introduction, Luna demonstrated an unexpected level of understanding about the situation. Before the staff had even begun their preparations, she had positioned herself near the connecting gate, making soft, rumbling sounds that seemed to calm both Maya and Star. The documentary crew, fortunately on site that day, scrambled to set up their equipment to capture what was about to unfold. "She knows exactly what's happening," Thomas observed, watching Luna's deliberate movements. "Look at how she's communicating with both of them, preparing them for the interaction." The cameras rolled as Luna displayed what the team now recognized as her teaching behavior, demonstrating calm, confident movements that both Maya and Star began to mirror. Sarah monitored the situation from the observation post, vital sensors tracking all three elephants' heart rates and stress levels. "This is remarkable," she reported. "Their vital signs are completely stable. Luna has them so well prepared that there's virtually no anxiety response." When the gates finally opened, the interaction that followed brought tears to the eyes of even the most experienced sanctuary staff. Luna approached the opening with graceful dignity, stopping just at the threshold. Instead of immediately entering, she extended her trunk in a gesture that Thomas recognized from their earliest trust-building exercises. Maya was the first to respond, moving forward to touch trunks with Luna in what had become their traditional greeting, but it was Star's reaction that truly demonstrated the success of Luna's mentorship. The formerly traumatized elephant, who months ago would have retreated from such interaction, confidently approached and joined in the greeting ceremony. "She's created her own family unit," Marcus remarked, watching the three elephants begin to explore their shared space. "But it's more than that. She's established a working model for elephant rehabilitation that we never could have designed ourselves." The cameras captured hours of footage as the three elephants settled into their new dynamic. Luna took on the role of matriarch naturally, guiding Maya and Star through the expanded territory with patience and wisdom. She showed them the best spots for dust baths, the strongest scratching posts, and the most comfortable shaded areas. What fascinated the observation team most was how Luna incorporated elements from both wild elephant behavior and sanctuary life into her leadership style. She would demonstrate natural foraging techniques, then show how to use the sanctuary's enrichment devices. It was a perfect blend of instinct and adaptation. "She's not just teaching them how to be elephants," Thomas explained during a documentary interview. "She's teaching them how to be sanctuary elephants, how to maintain their natural behaviors while thriving in a protected environment. It's something we've been trying to achieve for years, and Luna figured it out instinctively." The success of the integration led to an unexpected decision from the sanctuary board. They announced plans to establish what they called the Luna Learning Center, a specialized facility dedicated to elephant rehabilitation using the methods that Luna had demonstrated so effectively. "Think about it," Sarah said during a staff meeting. "We started with one traumatized elephant who not only recovered but developed a completely new approach to elephant rehabilitation. Now we have 3 thriving elephants who can help others heal. This could change everything we know about wildlife rehabilitation." The documentary team captured a particularly poignant moment during sunset, when Luna led Maya and Star in what appeared to be an evening ritual. The 3 elephants stood together, their trunks raised in what researchers recognized as a gesture typically seen among wild elephant families. It was a powerful symbol of how Luna had managed to preserve and pass on her cultural heritage despite years in captivity. Thomas sat in his usual spot, updating his journal with the day's observations. "We thought we were helping Luna heal," he wrote, "but she's shown us something far more important. She's shown us that these animals don't just need our help to recover. They have the wisdom and capacity to help each other heal in ways we never imagined." As night fell over the sanctuary, the cameras captured one final scene. Luna, Maya, and Star had settled into a comfortable triangle, their bodies touching lightly as they dozed. Every few minutes, one of them would reach out with their trunk to touch the others, a gentle reminder of their connection. The documentary's director whispered to Thomas, "I don't think we're just filming a rehabilitation story anymore. This is about the birth of something entirely new in wildlife conservation." Thomas nodded, watching his old friend Luna as she watched over her chosen family. She had indeed created something new, a model of healing that combined the wisdom of wild elephants with the realities of sanctuary life. The completion of the documentary coincided with another milestone at Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary. The Lunar Learning Center was ready to welcome its first group of specialist trainees, caregivers and veterinarians from sanctuaries around the world who had come to learn the revolutionary rehabilitation methods that Luna had inspired. Thomas stood before the group in the newly constructed education facility, the wall behind him displaying footage of Luna's journey from traumatized circus elephant to pioneering teacher. But instead of beginning with a lecture, he led the trainees to the observation area where Luna, Maya, and Star were engaged in their morning routine. "Watch closely," he instructed the group. "Everything you need to know about elephant rehabilitation is right there in front of you." The trainees looked puzzled until Luna began what appeared to be a teaching session with her two companions. Luna had developed a sophisticated approach to sharing her knowledge. She would first demonstrate a behavior, then watch as Maya and Star attempted it, making subtle sounds of encouragement or correction. What amazed the trainees most was how she adjusted her teaching style for each elephant, patient and methodical with Star, more playful and energetic with Maya. "This isn't just about physical recovery or behavioral modification," Sarah explained to the group. "What Luna has shown us is that true rehabilitation requires the restoration of cultural knowledge and social bonds. She's not just teaching them how to act, she's teaching them how to be." The documentary's premiere screening was held at the Sanctuary, with the projection visible from the elephant enclosure. As the film played, showing Luna's transformation from her darkest days to her current role as a mentor, the three elephants stood watching, their trunks intertwined in what had become their signature gesture of connection. "Look at their posture," Thomas whispered to Marcus during the screening. "They're not just standing there, they're engaged with the images, especially Luna. It's like she recognizes her own story." Indeed, Luna's eyes remained fixed on the screen, her ears moving forward whenever her voice appeared in the footage. The film's impact was immediate and far-reaching. Sanctuaries across the globe began requesting copies of the Luna Protocol, eager to implement its principles in their own elephant rehabilitation programs. But Thomas and the team knew that the documentary had captured something that couldn't be replicated through a simple manual. "What Luna has created here is more than a method," Thomas explained during a post-screening discussion. "It's a complete paradigm shift in how we approach wildlife rehabilitation. She's shown us that the best teachers for traumatized elephants are other elephants who have walked the same path." The success of the program led to an unexpected development. Other sanctuaries began reporting that their elephants, when shown footage of Luna's teaching sessions, displayed marked interest, and even attempted to mimic some of her behaviors. It was as if Luna's influence was reaching beyond the boundaries of Meadowland. One afternoon, as Thomas observed Luna teaching a particularly complex trunk movement to Star, he noticed something extraordinary. Maya had begun teaching the same movement to a recently arrived elephant in the adjacent enclosure, using Luna's exact teaching method but adding her own gentle encouragement. "The knowledge is spreading," Sarah remarked, documenting the interaction. "Luna taught Maya, who's now teaching others. It's exactly how elephant knowledge is preserved in the wild, passed down through generations, each adding their own understanding." The Sanctuary Board met to discuss the implications of these developments. They decided to expand the Lunar Learning Center's scope, creating what they called the Elephant Cultural Preservation Program. Its goal would be not just to rehabilitate traumatized elephants, but to actively preserve and promote the transmission of natural elephant behaviors and social structures within sanctuary settings. As twilight approached on the day of this announcement, Thomas sat in his usual spot, watching Luna with her chosen family. She had come so far from the broken elephant who had once stood motionless in her enclosure, lost in the trauma of her past. Now she stood tall, confident, a teacher and leader who had changed the face of elephant conservation. "You know what? The most beautiful part is," Sarah said, joining him on the observation bench. "She's not doing any of this for us. She's doing it because it's who she truly is, a wise, nurturing being who understands the importance of passing on knowledge." Luna, as if hearing their conversation, turned toward them and raised her trunk in what had become her signature greeting. Maya and Star immediately mimicked the gesture, creating a tableau that perfectly captured the essence of what they had achieved. Not just rehabilitation, but the restoration of elephant dignity and culture. As night fell over the sanctuary, the three elephants engaged in their evening ritual, their shadows merging into one in the fading light. Their soft rumbles echoed across the grounds, carrying a message of hope for all traumatized wildlife. Healing was possible, not just through human care, but through the wisdom and compassion of their own kind. The influence of Luna's story continued to ripple through the wildlife conservation community in unexpected ways. The documentary had not only captured her journey from trauma to healing, but had become a powerful tool for changing how people viewed elephant rehabilitation worldwide. As the sun rose over Meadowland Wildlife Sanctuary on a crisp morning, Thomas stood watching Luna lead her small herd in their morning routine, reflecting on how far they'd come. The Luna Learning Center had become a bustling hub of activity, with representatives from sanctuaries across the globe coming to learn from what Luna had taught them. But perhaps the most profound impact was on the public's understanding of elephant intelligence and emotional complexity. The documentary had touched hearts and opened minds, leading to increased support for elephant conservation efforts everywhere. "Look at this," Sarah said, showing Thomas her tablet. Messages had been pouring in from viewers around the world, sharing how Luna's story had changed their perspective on captive wildlife. Many wrote about their own visits to circuses in the past, now seeing those experiences through new eyes. Some even began campaigns to help other elephants still trapped in similar situations. Luna, seemingly aware of her growing influence, continued to expand her teaching repertoire. She had begun incorporating new elements into her sessions with Maya and Star, combining natural behaviors with innovative problem-solving techniques. The cameras that had once documented her recovery now captured her legacy in action. "She's created something that will outlive all of us," Marcus observed, watching Luna demonstrate a complex social behavior to a newly arrived elephant. "This isn't just about these elephants anymore. It's about changing how we approach wildlife rehabilitation for generations to come." The sanctuary had started receiving requests from film crews and researchers worldwide, all eager to document Luna's methods. But Thomas and the team remained protective of their elephants' well-being, carefully screening all requests and ensuring that any observation would be conducted on the elephants' terms. One morning, during a particularly peaceful teaching session, Luna did something that left even Thomas speechless. She gathered Maya and Star, along with two newer elephants who had recently joined their group, and led them through what appeared to be a ceremony of sorts. Each elephant took turns touching trunks with the others, creating a circle of connection that the sanctuary staff had never seen before. "It's like she's creating her own culture," Sarah whispered, frantically taking notes, a blend of wild elephant traditions and new adaptations for sanctuary life. She's literally building a bridge between their natural heritage and their current reality. The lunar protocol had evolved far beyond its original scope. What had started as a rehabilitation program for traumatized elephants had become a model for wildlife conservation that emphasized the preservation of animal culture alongside physical care. Sanctuaries implementing these methods reported unprecedented success rates in helping troubled elephants recover and thrive. As the documentary continued to screen around the world, Luna's daily life went on, marked by moments of profound connection and quiet wisdom. She spent her mornings teaching, her afternoons exploring with her herd, and her evenings in peaceful communion with her chosen family. The transformation from traumatized performer to respected teacher was complete. Thomas added a final chapter to his journal, documenting not just Luna's journey, but the lasting impact she had made on elephant conservation. "We thought we were saving one elephant," he wrote, "but Luna showed us how to save many. More importantly, she taught us that true healing comes not just from human care, but from the wisdom and compassion that elephants themselves possess." The sanctuary established an annual conference in Luna's honor, bringing together wildlife experts, conservationists, and caregivers to share knowledge and continue building on her legacy. But perhaps the most fitting tribute was the daily sight of elephants helping other elephants heal, passing on knowledge and traditions that might otherwise have been lost. As the sun set on another day at Meadowland, Luna stood with her growing family, their silhouettes merging in the golden light. Her story had become more than just a tale of recovery. It was a testament to the resilience of the elephant spirit and the power of allowing these magnificent creatures to be themselves. "Thank you," Thomas whispered to his old friend, watching. Her guide, her herd, through their evening routine. Luna paused, turning to meet his gaze with eyes that now sparkled with life and wisdom. She raised her trunk in their familiar greeting, a gesture that had come to mean so much more than just hello or goodbye. It was a reminder of the bond they shared and the journey they had taken together. The legacy of the elephant who once stood alone in her enclosure, lost in trauma, had become a beacon of hope for wildlife conservation. Luna had shown the world that even the deepest wounds could heal with the right kind of care and understanding. More importantly, she had proven that sometimes the best teachers are those who have walked the path from darkness to light themselves. Did you enjoy Luna's story of healing and transformation? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring wildlife stories. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of these magnificent creatures. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.